All right then, gang. A very good afternoon to you all. It's Andy here from the Silver Lining, and today I've got one of the better smiles on the Melbourne business landscape. Lupco Talevski is. Do you class yourself as an entrepreneur? Do you say that? Do you sort of refer to yourself as a bit of an entrepreneur?
I think it's a term that's been used and overused.
I think it's been overused a little bit.
I think, let's
100%. But I think there's a few people. I think there's a few people that that it genuinely applies to. Lupco and I have known each other for a couple of years now, and through the networking space, and that is really where this guy is very much invested in and benefits from. Building relationships and creating networks that allow both the people and himself and his better half to thrive. Lupco, how are you, my man?
Yeah, Andy, good. It's obviously a very changed time here in Australia and around the world, and just getting used to the new normal for now, the temporary new normal, and navigating my way through it. As I mentioned to you earlier, 7 weeks at home now, start of the 7th week for us. So it's been interesting to adapt to the constraints that exist. But I think adaptation is the key.
Mate, look, the reason why I'm really, really glad that Lupco's come on board to the show is, for one, I don't know whether you feel this, but I've always held you in quite a high regard from an intellect point of view. I just genuinely feel that you have quite a measured approach to everything. So I was quite interested to see how you've handled the ups and downs and the topsy-turvy of what's gone on. I always felt that you're always a guy that's in control. That's the feeling I get. I mean, it might be the whole duck analogy where you're floating along quite nicely and you're doing a lot of that underneath. But it works really, really well for me. Before we crack on though, it's always a case of human first, professional second, and whatever we do. So, mate, give us a bit of an idea as to who you are, what you're about, what your interests are, where you live. Who's Lupco?
Who's Lupco? I guess I'm the oldest of 4 boys, so in that respect, I've got to make headway for the rest of them to follow. I have lived in the east of Melbourne pretty much all my life. Currently with my partner Beck and our menagerie of pets. And what interests me probably most, aside from I guess the professional context of networking, which is a really passion of mine, is swimming. I love ocean swimming and taking on long swims in the ocean that challenge me mentally and physically. So that's sort of what has me be happy most of the time. So it's in a nutshell kind of who I am.
Ocean swimming in Australia, like as a foreigner, which I am, ocean swimming around Australia, possibly not the most intelligent thing I've heard people do, considering the volume of stuff that can get you in an ocean that is around Australia.
Andy, I've always held myself with a statement that I heard many years ago: if you don't want to be on the menu, don't swim through the kitchen. If I get in there knowing that it's not really my domain and I'm just a guest there, it has you have an appreciation and a respect that you need to have. Do I ever put myself in situations that are dangerous, like swimming around colonies of seals in a wetsuit? That's not the smartest thing to do. It's a case of taking calculated risk, and at the end of the day, it's something I love. I know that I'm in a different domain where other animals are more dominant, more powerful than I am. So it's just that understanding that you do it, but there's always that sort of thought in the back of your mind.
Love the phrase. That phrase is brilliant. Love that. That's amazing. Really like what you said towards the end there, though, about putting yourself in the right context with respect to where you sit in the pecking order of that life, of that part of life, right? Interesting conversation to have that, because I dare say, this COVID stuff, it's very much leveled the playing field. There's a hell of a lot of, sharks, shall we say, big dogs in the world that have been brought down to earth with a bit of a bump. And I, for one, have had a chat with a few different people that sort of held themselves in that sort of regard, that are really, really struggling right now to understand the fact that, they've been brought back a peg or two. Life, Mother Nature, or whatever you want to call it. Well, I don't know if you call it Mother Nature, but life has brought them back down to earth with a bit of a bump. Do you feel that through your swimming, that it allows you to be devoid of ego to an extent and have a confidence that really, because there is a fine line between confidence and arrogance, and I think that you show a real deep level of confidence that never really flirts with the line of arrogance at all, in my opinion. Do you think that the swimming really helps you with that?
Look, I've actually often tried to contextualize the effect that I get from the stuff that I do. So some of the longer swims that I've done are, around the 20-kilometre mark, which is a swim that I do over in Western Australia. Sadly, I've not. This year I had a fail at that. Didn't get all the way across, but sometimes you learn more in failure than you do in success. And I think the reason I keep pushing myself to go back there is each time the swim is different. I'm different. The challenges are different. So I've got that as one counterbalance, and the other counterbalance I've got is that I've been doing ocean swimming for about 13 years, since about 2007. Swum with the Brighton Icebergers in Melbourne, and often when you're getting into water that's 10 degrees and cooler, the coldest I've swum in is about 6.8 degrees. Back to your point, you actually don't have any room for any other thought than physically checking in with yourself. Am I okay? And am I going to make it to where I need to get to? So to your point, what you're asking is that there is no space almost for the ego, because there's no space for anything other than, am I going to actually make it to the end of this swim? But and to your earlier point around people getting knocked down a couple of rungs, I think this is just like any other crisis. It's a little bit different in the sense that we're all being locked in our own homes, for a bit of isolation for a period of time. But it's sort of, I think, heightened what the one true currency that has immense value is, and that's connection with people. Because it's the thing that we haven't had as much of. And I've been really conscious when I've been speaking to people to actually talk about physical distancing and social connection, because I don't like the concept of social distancing, because we've got more technological ways of connecting with people, whether it be through a phone call or, like this, through the internet, or, Zoom call or FaceTime or whatever you want to do. We've got more avenues to connect, I think, now more so than ever, as we physically distance ourselves from one another. I think it's really important to actually socially come closer together, and really get involved in that currency that exists between two human beings, which is connection.
Love that distinction very much so. I'm just going to put that up on the screen there. Physical distancing, social connection. I really, really like that distinction, and I think it's something that very clearly defines, and realistically, I think it's probably something that if that phrase of physical distancing, if that phrase there was adopted more by government and the powers that be and what have you, I think people would have a much greater understanding, appreciation, and fear it a lot less, right? Because you're absolutely spot on. The whole premise of social distancing, it's promoting self-isolation, which is never nice. I mean, that's why you see on TV shows and whatnot, and films and stuff, where they're like, for example, The Shawshank Redemption, where solitary confinement is seen as the ultimate punishment, right? And the same applies here. We're being asked to distance ourselves socially, which is really against DNA of human beings, if you think about it. That I love. Physical distancing, but social connection. And on that, I mean, you, like I said earlier on, you know, from the minute we met, I felt that a level of comfort and calm, you know, connecting with yourself and conversing and so on and so forth. Despite the fact that you, you know, I think you were with Digital Tiger, I think you were at the time, and I think, you know, the fact that despite working and operating at a level in the businesses that you were dealing with, you had a genuine humility that, you know, it really broke down barriers. There was no hierarchy in the conversation, which was fab. Tell me, man, what made you so passionate about that networking space? Because let's face it, I don't know if there's many people in the business landscape of Melbourne that haven't met you at least once. I think you do tend to get around a little bit in a nice way. Saying that completely nicely, Beth. I'm saying it in a very plutonic manner. If she's watching, I promise. Mate, what stoked that fire, and when did it start roughly?
You know, rather than give you a pre-canned response to that, I'm just trying to, I guess, keep in with the ethos of the podcast, right? So the industry that I'm in and what I do for a job is almost contradictory to my upbringing as a young child and a young boy. So I went through probably about a good 5 years of bullying at school, at high school. Extreme ostracization, so not a lot of friends, and bar for having swimming and water polo away from school, I'm not quite sure where I might have ended up, you know, because I had a relevance to my teammates when I was playing water polo. They were all older than me, so where I was lacking at school, I gained in my sporting prowess and achievements. And I grew up in a very lucky time where bullying finished as soon as I walked out the school gate. You know, there wasn't this online ability for people to access me 24/7. So somehow life has played out, or maybe my choices along the way have played out, that I would put myself in a position of being in sales, which is, you know, consistently being okay with getting no. And it's almost contradictory to my upbringing, right? Because it's the one thing that I never dealt with well, was the fact that I wasn't part of the in crowd or part of the accepted group. I was on the outside. And so I think that founded the need for connection. And I think then as I came into my professional life and I came into selling, and started to learn that for me to succeed, often I needed to help others succeed as well. And that connection then slowly pushed my awareness and the value of connecting people, so that, you know, if I help enough people get what they need, then I'll end up getting what I need as well. And so I guess that's probably the best way that I can answer it in line with the podcast is to really say that I guess it's almost like the two bookends of my life so far have been, you know, being on the outside looking in, and now being part of a connected web where I can really have influence and bring goodness to people through networking connections, business connections, social connections, and that's something that I've become more and more passionate about as I've gotten older.
I think that I've not really thought about it actually. When you've gone to that point of your life with the whole bullying side of things. I mean, I, you know, similarly went through a phase of bullying. It's what happens when both your parents are coppers and you go to a public school, right? You know, and they hear little piggy trotting down the road. So. Point though, and I'd be interested to hear more about more from people that are very much in this networking space that really do thrive in that environment, whether there was an element of bullying in their background that is consistent, and whether there's a consistency there. Because what you said there makes absolute sense. You go through a phase in your life where you are ostracized and you are cast to the outer, and it kind of makes you have that sort of yearning to want to be part of something. Yes, there may be an acceptance piece there, and upon reflection, I reckon maybe that's probably something that I'm just starting to overcome now. Is realistically that need for the tick and the acceptance piece. But what I think is really interesting is whether bullying creates that sort of need to want to provide in order to get. In order to get something, that sort of transaction there, that subliminal transaction. Very, very interesting point that you make there. And I would be delighted to hear from anybody in the Silver Lining gang, if any of you that really thrive in the networking field, had gone through some bullying in the past. That'd be a really interesting thing to have a look at. You've always been in the water, though, by the sounds of it.
Yeah, I have, and I guess just on the bullying point, right? So, and to tie it to current circumstance, yeah. I'm not the only person in the world that's been bullied, and like you, right? Some of us come out of it and take a positive direction. Others come out of it and take a very negative direction. And like current circumstance, often we have no control as to what comes to us, but we have absolutely 100% control in terms of how we respond to those things and the lessons that we take away from them. I like when you framed up today's chat that you didn't want any rah-rah and this is the best time ever. I had a moment where my role got made redundant on the 20th of March, and I sat here for 5 minutes after Beck had left the room after we'd had a chat and had a mini meltdown, right? And I allowed myself to completely just drop my bundle in that 5 minutes, but said to myself, look, if I look back on the last 10 years, the last 5 years especially, the one thing that I have had every time after I've had a challenge is the ability to just stand up and keep going. And so whether it's bullying or whether it's losing a job or a relationship ending or whatever it might be, any challenge that comes at us, we may not be able to control the circumstances of what comes at us, but we definitely control how we respond to that and the lessons that we look for from that. And so, bullying can be a catalyst in your life for seeking a greater connection. I mean, I went through a period of time after I got out of high school where, and I talk about the two phases of bullying, right? You get bullied by the people, and then once they leave, you end up bullying yourself. So I went through phases of self-destructive behavior, self-sabotage, all that sort of stuff, until I realized that at one point I was both the inmate and the warden in my own prison. And then only I could get myself out of that, right? So it required self-love, it required self-healing, and to realize that none of that was really my fault. It was just the way that people were perceiving me at the time. Did it mean that I was a bad person? Absolutely not. Did it mean that I shouldn't create a world in which I could add value to other people and get value in return? Absolutely not. So, it's very much around understanding, what am I going through? What are the lessons I can take out of this? Do I have evidence to back up the fact that I've been through something like this before and I've gotten through it? I mean, there was a great meme that I've saved and kept for myself that, you've survived 100% of the worst days of your life so far, just keep going.
Yeah.
So, and I think it's really pertinent now for a lot of people who might be struggling. Some people find it really difficult to be away from people, but we still got phones, we've still got video, still the ability to pick up and, schedule a call with someone, even if it's 5 minutes just to check in and say, hey, how you doing? It doesn't mean that we should stop that. If anything, it means we should probably reach out more.
Mate, we could end the conversation there. That was brilliant. I don't want to though, so don't turn off. No. I don't know whether I'm doing this by accident, but every time, each interview I've got, it's almost like it's been a chain. It's been like the next link in the chain. I had a chat with Daniel Burgess earlier, founder of the Phoenix Experience, and top lad.
Great
But
guy.
what
Yeah.
he was saying absolutely ties in with this, is that ultimately, when faced with adversity, we have a choice, right? We have a choice to, evolve as a human being and learn and adapt and change, or we carry on as we are and, crash and burn. He said, the really cool thing that he said, though, was that either way, you are going to have the challenges. The challenges aren't going to go away. It's not like there's an easier path and a hard path. They are both paths that are going to face the same challenges, but it's almost, but depending on which road you take will determine how much further you get along the trip, right? And what you just said there about the fact that we are absolutely in control of how we respond to those challenges and those tests and so on and so forth is absolutely relevant to today. I think there's a lot of people still with their head in the sand. I mean, Chris Hall said a few episodes ago, talking about the 5 stages of grief and talking about denial being stage 2, and that being a stage that a lot of small businesses, for example, are really stuck in. There's still that long-standing denial that their world is about to crumble. It's like almost like it's a bad dream, and they're going to snap out of it soon, right? And that's the really interesting thing about what you said is that we all face these sort of challenges and tests and so on and so forth. And some of us face them a lot younger, than some of us face them a little bit later on in life and what have you. I love the fact, though, that you allow yourself the chance to be vulnerable for a second, for a moment there, whether it's 5 minutes or 5 hours, it doesn't make a difference. Before looking at seeing how you can really adapt and evolve and move forward with what's going on. Now, safe to say, though, it probably wasn't your desired choice, right? I don't think any of us are glad that we've had this Corona thing carry on. I think we'd much rather see everything, continue on the path that we were intending it to be. But mate, with regards to how you've managed to, stay connected, reconnect, nurture connections that you've grown over the journey. With respect to what's going on right now and what have you, one observation that a few people have made is that they're having more conversations, which is great. They're finding it a lot more tiring than what they used to. How have you found that? How have you found that whole process of staying connected and whatnot in this environment, facing a screen? You've not got that physical interaction. You don't really get to feel the aura of the other person and what have you, which is really quite vital. How have you found it being at such a keen and important networker within the Melbourne business landscape?
I think it's about finding balance, right? So yes, it's awesome to be in a room where you can network with people, but sometimes it can also be distracting to be in a room where you're trying to network with people. Whereas when you're one-on-one, you can get someone's undivided attention and you can have mine, right? So whereas you often find that you'll be in a networking room and you'll be talking to someone and you'll see their eyes sort of dart to the side because they've just seen someone that they want to go and speak with. Whereas when I've got you on the video call, I've got you in the video call and that's it.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just about trying to reframe, right? Again, it's and I learned some lessons from living with my grandmother for a number of years when she was not well. And I said to my dad that I actually took away more from those 6 years living with her, watching her progress through dementia, than I think I gave her in the time and the energy that I put into living with her over that period of time. But the one thing that I took away from that was the power of reframing. Right. And when you have the ability to sit back for a second and go, you're right, having my role be made redundant, and I was really careful to use the specific words. I wasn't made redundant. My role was made redundant. And so, again, reframing it in such a way as to give it a new context and a new meaning, because, and Dan would very much attest to this, that our words have power, and the things that we say, whether we like it or not, have power over us. And so, if you think about the things that you're saying and you think about the things that you're thinking, as well, you have the ability to recontextualize what you're going through. Was it ideal for the role to be made redundant? Absolutely not. But I've been quite buoyed by the conversations that I have been included in, the opportunities that have come across the desk, if you like, or the video screen, where people, some of them saying, look, you know, I love what you're about. I can't pay you a wage, but, you know, can we come to some sort of commercial arrangement if you send me an opportunity that I can look after you in that respect? So, and that's the fruit that is being born from the seeds that were sown maybe 2, 3, 4 years ago when I first met these people. So is it ideal? No. Does it mean that I should just stop and sit in the middle of the road and have a sook party? Well, absolutely not. It's just about finding a new way to be in this time and making it mean something positive. So yeah, sure, I'd love to be there and shake your hand, have a coffee with you. But you know, take away the connection, take away the conversation, look for the depth in what you're having, in the interaction that you're having with the person, and yeah, I guess take enjoyment out of the connection that we do have.
I love that, you know, that you said there that with physical interactions and you know, standard sort of coffees and, you know, going into a cafe or going into a networking lunch or breakfast or whatever, it's really interesting that you made the observation that there's a lot of distractions, right? People's eyes dart one side or the other, or whatever, and they go, oh crap, I really wanted to talk to that guy or gal or whatever the case may be. I think part of the reason why this is so much more tiring is the fact that we're getting our attention spans are getting stretched like more than ever now, right? I mean, I, by my own admission, have one of the shorter attention spans on the planet, and yet, you know, I'm finding that this is this show and these interactions, these very, very direct interactions, have been a really good challenge in that respect, and helped to build that muscle of attention, you know, of really staying connected and present and in the moment and in the conversation that is happening right now. And it's quite liberating, I think, in a sense, right? When we've got no distractions, because life has a stack of them. We're all distracted by stuff on a regular basis. This is a really, really cool little exercise that I would encourage lots of people to do this sort of stuff, right? To do more live things, to have more conversations in this sort of environment where you really are tested with regards to how much are you actually paying attention, because it's such a vital skill, right?
Yep.
It's such absolutely. A vital skill.
Agree 100%, Andy. And you know, the thing that I guess is the real great takeaway point from what you just said is that it is like a muscle, right? So whether it's concentration, attention, you know, focus, mindset, doesn't matter which component you speak about our psyche, everything is, I guess you can work on any of it, right? And it's all exercisable, for want of a better term. So sure, we could sit here and go, how crap is it to be locked inside the house for now? For Beck and I, this is the start of week 7. Or you could say, well, great. Well, the opportunity here is for me to work on something that means that when I come out the other side and we go back to whatever new normal looks like, I'm going to have now a more powerful skill set. And that skill set will be to be able to be with someone, perhaps in a noisy environment, and make them feel like they're the only person there, which intrinsically will build a stronger relationship with that person. It will show them that I really care about them so much that I've just zoned out everything else. And guess what? I used 6, 7, 8, 10 weeks of isolation to build that skill into myself. So, you know, there's great opportunities here for us to use this time effectively to really expand who we are and who we know ourselves to be.
That's, yeah, absolutely spot on. Absolutely spot on. I think, and I want to ask you a question in a second that I think will tie into what, who was it that said it? Come on, Andy, go through the memory banks. Gordon Jenkins, who coaches networking and what have you. He said it wonderfully well, that introverts tend to make really good networkers. Would you consider yourself as an introvert?
Maybe an extroverted introvert. Not really. I'm more garrulous than most introverts would be. I do enjoy the company of my own company and quiet time. But again, like that muscle that we spoke about earlier, I've done it. I've worked at it so hard now that I could sit in traffic for 5 minutes and just zone out if I'm stuck at a red light, and make that 5 minutes feel like an hour, because it's about the intent and the focus that you bring to the moment. It's not about the length. It's very much about the quality and what you put into it, and then what you get back out of it. So, am I an introvert? Probably not.
Fair enough, mate. Fair enough. Now, with regards to the your situation, and this really does highlight the importance of networking, and having networking as a detailed part of your business plan and your life plan moving forward. Because at the end of the day, catching up with mates, that's social networking, right? So making sure that we have that locked and loaded in our diaries regularly moving forward, so important. With yourself, networking, when it comes to the importance of networking, you more than a number of people right now would understand it more intimately, purely based on the fact that your role got made redundant, and you have found solace financially in your network that you've built over the course of time. In terms of people that are small businesses that are, either sole traders, or they are, very much hands-on operators, spend their entire time on the tools, or at the desk, or whatever the case may be. How can you how can you put it into words how you would justify taking time away from the tools in order to put time into the networking side of things? Because one of the issues that a lot of people have with networking is that you pay however much it is to go to some lunch, and then it's just filled with business coaches that have never owned a business before. How can you say to those people, how can you justify to those people that it is worth doing, that have that sort of idea?
I can completely understand what you've just said, because I've been to a number of those events where it has been full of business coaches who've literally just finished a coaching course and hung business coach on their door. And
then you get about 7 business cards fired within your hand, and you didn't even know where they came from.
Yeah, exactly. So, look, doesn't matter whether it's at your footy club or your football club, or your daughter's dance recital, or wherever. Networking opportunities exist everywhere, and probably the 2 questions that I've asked most of people when I've met them are, what challenges are you facing right now, and how can I help? And you would be surprised how few people, or I'm often surprised about how many people say to me, "Well, you one of very few people have actually asked how I can help." We have an intrinsic need as human beings to help other people. If anyone wants to argue that point with me, go walking down the street and see a little old lady fall over and drop her fruit or something. People will naturally want to go and provide assistance, right? It's built into us, because there's a level of self-affirmation. If I go and help that person, it means that I'm a good person. Yep. So, asking someone, how can I help, gives them an opportunity to be a little bit vulnerable, gives them an opportunity to open up to you. But guess what? It also provides them an opportunity to ask you how they can help you. And in doing that, that's how you create that strong bond and connection with someone, where people feel invested in making an effort to really help out your day. I mean, I've still through this time been sending messages to people saying, hey, just checking in, making sure you and your closest are great, like I did with you. If there's anything I can do to help. Right now, I don't know what that is. You're going to set the parameters of what that looks like. You might say to me, hey, listen, man, I need someone to listen to me for 5 minutes. Cool. Pick up the phone, give me a call, or let's hop on a Zoom call, right? And you never know where those seeds, when they will germinate and where they will germinate.
I think the challenge that a lot of people face when it comes to that question of how can I help is they have this preconceived idea as to literally how they can help, how they themselves can physically help. Ultimately, we don't know what's going on. I mean, look, problems can be superficial, they can be very obvious, but so there might be a superficial challenge like I'm not getting enough sales, right? I'm not getting enough leads. But the way that that person has interpreted that as an issue, and to our point earlier with regards to things only have the level of importance that we put on it. There might be a much deeper issue that they've got that they just need to get out and talk to someone about, that you might not be qualified for, but the fact that you're just there and have offered the opportunity for them to air an issue that they've got that's a little bit more deep rooted. It might just be a case of just helping them have a bit of clarity within their own minds that then allows them to go get those leads. Because ultimately, when we start a business when we're involved in something, when we've been hired to do a role, it's because we have a skill set that is appropriate or consummate to that role or to that business or whatever, all being well. I mean, there are some people that start businesses with delusions of grandeur, but that's a whole different topic, right? And a lot of the time, the reason why people can't move forward is because they just forget or they doubt their own skill set and the things that got them to that position in the first place in a positive sense, right? I love that that's what that you've got that point across, that asking how can I help doesn't need to be predefined by what I know I can do. We all know people that might be able to help, right? And I think that's something that a lot of people need to take on board, is the fact you can help by just having people that you know help. And what have you. I love that. I love that you've really made that distinction, which is great.
Well, Andy, to get back to the reason that I really wanted to have this chat with you was one of the things you said right at the very start of the podcast, right? Human first. So when you ask the question, don't ask it through the lens of IT sales guy, real estate sales guy, manufacturing business owner, whatever, right? Ask it as a human being.
Amazing.
You're not standing in front of a manufacturing business owner. You're standing in front of a human being first and foremost. And as soon as I put the filter through, oh, well, I can't ask Andy, how I can help because he's in real estate and I'm in IT and I can never help him. I've just allowed my preconceived ideas and filters to block my opportunity to connect with you as a human being. I don't know what you need. I don't know what help you need right now. It might literally just be a 5-minute chat where I say nothing and you talk. That might be what help you need right now. And guess what? Every human being's qualified to listen.
Well, we've got 2 ears and 1 mouth, right? When used in proportion, it's pretty powerful bit of kit. I hope you're listening, Donald Trump. We're not getting political. We're not getting political.
I thought that was the comedy segment.
Right, I've had plenty of people laugh at me through this series, but unfortunately, none of it's been intentional, right? Look, an equation that I've been starting to really hone in on with my coaches is something that I just blurted out in a session that really had there was no sort of revolutionary intent behind it. I just came out with it, and it's the equation of EQ plus IQ equals inspiring action equals IA, and when put through that in that order. So you go through the emotional intelligence filters, then the intellectual intelligence filters in order to make the equation balance. As long as we do it in that way, and in that sort of order, then we as professionals, we as human beings, we as partners, we as friends, all that sort of stuff, like you said, it just ties in perfectly with what you said. Ultimately, we need both filters. It's all well and good saying, how can I help? Being a human being, listening to them and listening with intent and all the good human stuff. And then trying to BS an answer that is clearly based on, it's clearly an answer that they're looking for that's really in a textbook, or it is defined by an intellectual constraint that they've got right now, right? Ultimately, you do need both. But I think understanding that going through the human filter first is the primary barrier to entry for a lot of people when dealing with you as a professional and as a human being, right? I think if we just go down the professional path right now, a lot of people in business are absolute, and look, this is through no fault of their own, through the circumstances, are so set in who they are as a professional and not as who they are as a person, because of the fact that they're trying to cling on to their job for dear life. So all their focus is on their job and their work and their income and the tangible stuff. I think a number of people in a professional sense are absolutely forgetting that they are human beings. They go home or they leave their laptop or whatnot and they go sit on the couch or whatever and Netflix and chill and whatever. And they feel all the human stuff, right? They're not devoid of emotion. They're not absolutely immune to any of the stuff that's going on. But they really do tend to forget about it as soon as they hit the laptop again, because of the fact that it is really intense right now. Income is at a premium and so on and so forth. I don't want to keep you for too much longer, mate, because I understand that you've got you've got a much better half and a zoo of pets to go and feed and what have you. But just this final question: is there anything that you could recommend, or is there anything that you could suggest that would help people to really maintain that sort of human first filter when they're in their business lives? I mean, is there anything that you could perhaps suggest, or any sort of words of advice that you could give? Because you are brilliant at it. You are absolutely brilliant at it. And when you ask, because a lot of people ask how they can help, and it's just superficial BS because they feel they have to ask. When you ask, it is with absolute intent. It's got a bit of an intensity to it that is undeniably authentic. What can you suggest to people that are really sort of struggling to get their minds out of the professional sort of what they are and focus more on who they are moving forward?
Make a concerted effort not to collapse the two, right? Because our career is not who we are. Our career is something that we do. And if we do it well, it then affords us to bring who we really are into that career. But who we are is not our career. Right? When you asked me at the start, right, I told you that I was the oldest of 4 boys, that, partner to Beck, dad to some dogs and cats and stuff like that. It's, they're the things that is who we really are. And really focus on making sure that we think about, well, who is it? Who am I, right? If I called 10 of my closest friends and asked them to say, tell me who I am, but don't talk about my career, I'm going to get things like compassionate, friendly, caring, all focus on those things, and have the career component be an avenue for you to bring those strengths and qualities to the fore, rather than sitting there going, oh, I'm an IT sales guy. Well, great. So what happens when that gets taken away? That's not who I am. It's just what I do.
I think that's absolutely perfect, and it ties in wonderfully well with my cool runnings analogy. The whole gold medal chat where Ben Bannock sort of asks about the importance of the gold medals, and his coach turns around and says, "Look, if you're no good without them, you're going to be no good with them." It is a perfect way to bring this conversation to a head, because I think if people just simply ask the question of themselves, who am I? And do it every day. Center yourself, align yourself with who you are as an individual, align yourself with your values. And me and Dan talked about values and how corporate land has absolutely just bastardized them and really not made people feel that they're not, like, the whole point of knowing what your values are. It's not relevant to them because, you know, it's not their business, so to speak. You know what I mean? And but asking yourself, who am I? Looking yourself in the mirror and ask, who am I? And if you can't answer that, then that is something that you need to prioritize in a big, big way, because, and this is one of the things that's created so much chaos and so much upset for a lot of people, because what they have and what they are is being taken away from them. And what they've been left with really doesn't satisfy them, really does not sit well with them. And that is that question of who they are as individuals. And look, guys, anybody that's watching, if you need to talk through that, and this is what we just said before, a lot of times it's not the fact that you've forgotten what to do. It's not like you've just, like, the corona is just taking your skill set away from you. Far from it. You've still got the skills that have got you to that point in the first place. But maybe it's a question of who you are and how you define who you are and what your values are moving forward. I'm going through a bit of an evolution myself, you know, forced through circumstance. I'm not forced through circumstance. I was kind of feeling like it was due anyway at some stage soon. But it's really interesting that my values that I've came out with yesterday, did a big session yesterday. The values that I came out with yesterday are really different to the values that I came out with about 3 years ago. And, you know,
and they'll be different in 3 years' time, Andy. Right? That's evolution. Right? We're not here to be the same today and be the same in 50 years' time. Our purpose is to evolve and grow. You know, to your point, like I said earlier, you know, who am I and what do I stand for? And you know, in these times when it's really tough, it's really easy to sit there and go, it's really dark, it's really hard, you know, it's all getting on top of me. But I think people need to actually focus on, when they've asked that question, who am I and what do I stand for? It's seeking my own light, right? And I heard this years ago. In the vast blackness of space, it only takes one star to shine to bring light, right? But once there is light, no matter how much darkness you have, you can never extinguish that light. So always look inside, ask yourself the question, who am I? What do I stand for? What am I about? What can I give? And when you really focus on those and you push them out into the world, whether that be in your relationship, in your friendships, in your career, great things will come back, and they'll come back highly amplified.
What a profound and brilliant way to end this conversation. Lupco, I always enjoy spending time with you, man. We don't do it often enough. And we need to do it a lot more often, because every time I converse with you, I always come away feeling somewhat enriched and you know, and with a drive to rock and roll as I start my day and as your day comes to an end. Mate, thank you so much for your time. How can people reach out to you? You've got a pretty prominent LinkedIn. You know, I think it's fair to say there's not many Lupco Talevskis in and around Melbourne and Australia, and particularly ones with that kind of smile. But what's your preferred platform if anybody wants to reach you?
Look, feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn. It's probably the social media platform I use most often. I tend to I'm pretty slack on Facebook, to be honest. I use that mostly to communicate with relatives overseas. So yeah, reach out on LinkedIn. And you know, I'm not fussed. You know, whether it's LinkedIn or phone or you know, I think my LinkedIn profile has my email address on there as well. If people don't feel comfortable picking up the phone or calling, drop me a note over LinkedIn or drop me an email. Happy to have, you know, I'm open to conversations and have these types of conversations. I value your time and thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to chat with you. It's been equally as rewarding and fulfilling.
Guys, reach out to this guy. Do yourself a favor. Aside from anything else, he's just a really, really to the core good individual. Lupco Talevski, thank you so much for joining us on the Silver Lining. Guys, take care. If there's anyone or anything that you do want to have talked about while we're getting ourselves through and gaining from the situation that we find ourselves in, feel free to reach out, DM us on any of the platforms that you see in this video on, and you know, we will do our best to help you out in any way that we can. From Lupco and myself, you guys take care and enjoy the rest of your day. Thanks, Lupco.
Thanks, mate.